The answer to the ABC News American Election Challenge, which state had chosen the winning presidential candidate most often, is New Mexico. 21 out of 22 elections. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Indeed, New Mexico has voted with a winner in every presidential election since 1920, but one in 1976. Mr. Ford took the state, not Mr. Carter. And now ABC News is in a position to project in the state of New Mexico that Al Gore is the winner in New Mexico. ABC projects that Al Gore is the winner in New Mexico, another key piece for Mr. Gore as he tries to reach 270, and everybody around me wants to talk about New Mexico. Mark Halpern, let's start with you.
Again, highly contested state. Governor Bush thought it was a good state for him, the western part of the state, a lot like Texas. They call it Little Texas. Lots of people there mad at the administration about farming issues. Lots of people mad about gun issues, but a huge Hispanic population, and again, a state that, as you said, votes with the winner that Bill Clinton carried.
And George Stephanopoulos, Latino population. Mr. Bush had appealed to the Latino population, growing influence in the state.
He did, but Mr. Gore tried even harder, Peter. In fact, one of his final rallies at Las Cruces, New Mexico in the final weekend was to bring Hispanic and Latino leaders from all over the country. In New Mexico, they make up over a third, about a third of the electorate. 7 in 10 went for Vice President Gore. Big, big win here for Gore tonight.
I'm going to come back and talk to you both again about organization in just a second, but Lynn Sure can tell us something about how the New Mexico vote actually went.
Peter, what I can tell you is that the white vote in New Mexico, which was 60% of the vote, went for George Bush. 57-37, that's pretty big. But as George mentioned, it was the Hispanic vote that really put Mr. Gore on top. Let's take a look at those specific numbers. Hispanic voters were about a third of the population. How did they go? 69% for Al Gore, only 30% for Rick Lazio. Another example of a minority group making the big difference for Al Gore tonight. Peter?
Okay, thanks very much. And let me just ask you, Mark, and then George, organization, just as you've looked at it over the last few weeks of the campaign, who's got the better organization?
Karl Rove, the Republican Party, running George Bush's campaign, had one big goal: build an organization, a national organization, knowing that the Democrats have labor, have civil rights groups, have a built-in organization, tried to match that, and built what everyone said was the biggest organization anyone had ever built in a presidential campaign.
And George Stephanopoulos, do you see any, do you agree with that?
Well, I do, except, you know, no question Karl Rove tried to catch up, but he couldn't do it. In fact, I think if these numbers hold up as they're going right now, there's going to be a new political star in the Democratic Party, and his name is Michael Hooley.
Right.
He was the turnout guru for the Gore campaign, a Boston political operative. They set up big turnout operations in all these states. They even had people like the former Dukakis campaign manager, John Sasso, running field operations in an individual state. He comes from the old school of politics, the old James Michael Curley school of Massachusetts politics, and they really got a lot of troops out there on the ground. He'll get a lot of credit.
Says something about his efficiency that we have a picture of him ready to actually go in the file. Koki Roberts has some house calls. Koki.
We do, Peter, and ABC News is ready to say that the Democrats will gain seats in the House of Representatives tonight. However, we're not yet ready to say whether they will gain enough seats in order to take control of the House of Representatives, and I can show you why that is. Here is a Democratic pickup in Oklahoma, 2nd District, where Tom Coburn, the incumbent, retired because he had term limited himself. The Democrat Brad Carson has defeated Andy Ewing, a car dealer there. Brad Carson was supported by the National Rifle Association in his primary, so very much of the district. But to show you how hard it is for the Democrats, in Pennsylvania's 4th District, Melissa Hart has won an open Democratic seat. She is a Republican. That was a seat abandoned by Ron Klink in order to run for the Senate, and he has lost that Senate seat. And in New York's 1st District, Felix Grucci, the Republican, has defeated Regina Seltzer, the Democrat. That was also a Democratic seat that is now switched to the Republicans. So although we expect Democrats to pick up seats tonight, it's going to be eking them out. So far, the Republicans are up 1.
Koki, let me just change the subject with you slightly. Why does Al Gore lose Tennessee?
Why does Al Gore lose Tennessee? Partly because it's become a very Republican state. Both senators from Tennessee are Republicans, and he has had a hard time there. And George Bush paid a huge amount of attention to Tennessee, spent yesterday in Tennessee, and was dying to take it from from Gore. Looks like he did.
Okay, just one thing about Mr. Bush now. You know that we have projected Florida for Mr. Gore. I think everybody's now projected Mr. Gore winning in Florida. Mr. Bush says he is not yet ready to concede Florida. So that only complicates the evening just a little bit, but only at that first level. Mr. Bush says he is not ready to concede Florida. Mark Halpern on why Mr. Gore loses in Tennessee.
It's an increasingly conservative state, and of course, just like his father 30 years ago, he's been accused of getting a little bit more distant from Nashville, more of Washington than of Tennessee. And it's a state that's got now a Republican governor, 2 Republican senators. It's almost not his home state, as the Republicans have charged.
And has a lot of tobacco.
That's right. Tobacco, a tobacco state. And again, a state that has all the things out there that people have not liked in other states. Guns, a lot of people, Second Amendment advocates, a pro-life community, lots of things that have caused trouble for Al Gore in some other states.
Okay, I want to bring back Michael Beschloss, our historian, who's with us in our Washington Bureau tonight, because, Michael, the last time, I've said it before, that a presidential candidate won the election but lost his home state was Woodrow Wilson in 1916.
That's exactly right, and that was another very close election in which his opponent, Charles Evans Hughes, went to sleep thinking that he was going to be president, and when he woke up, someone said to a telephone call, "The president can't take your call," and the caller said, "Tell him he's not president anymore." It doesn't look as if that's going to happen tonight.
What else catches your eyes? This is very close, Michael. Very, very close still.
It is a very close election, and we cannot say who's going to win. But, you know, one of the things we're going to have to come up with in the next few days is what accounted for the victory of Mr. Gore or Mr. Bush tonight, especially the last few days. And it makes me think a little bit, Peter, of 1968, Nixon versus Humphrey. That was so close, and what happened was Lyndon Johnson declared a bombing hold in Vietnam on Halloween. Voters just flooded to Humphrey. Then on the Sunday before Election Day, the South Vietnamese refused to come to the table. They went back to Nixon. Nixon won narrowly.
I agree, Michael, and thank you very much. I'm not sure that the drinking under the influence of alcohol even begins to compare with anything in the 1968 campaign. But as we looked at our polls in the final days of the campaign, we found that a great majority of the people did not think that November surprise, as it was called by many in the media, made much difference to their appraisal of either of the candidates. Sam.
Well, you know, we're talking about 5 Senate seats necessary to be picked up by the Democrats to control, and you say, why not 4? I mean, it's 54-46. Tie would be broken by the vice president. But of course, if Lieberman is the vice president, his seat will be taken by a Republican probably, because the Republican governor of Connecticut will appoint one. And if Lieberman loses, he's in the Senate, well, Dick Cheney will be the vice president. He'll break the tie for the Republican. Takes 5, Peter.
This is Mr. Bush at home or in a hotel. To be honest, I've forgotten where.
I had a
watching.
strong statement to make. My man Bruni's technology went down the tubes on him. This was Governor Ridge calling. It just happened to be calling when y'all came up, and he doesn't believe the projections. He believes there's a lot of votes still outstanding, that we've had heavy turnouts in what he calls the T of Pennsylvania. We're getting the same report out of Florida as well. The networks called this thing awfully early, but the people actually counting the votes are coming up with a little different perspective. And so we're pretty darn upbeat about things.
Okay, Governor Bush pretty darn upbeat about this, and as you heard us say just a moment ago, Mr. Bush does not concede in Florida. Gets a call from Governor Ridge of Pennsylvania saying that the votes have not all been counted in that T of Pennsylvania, with the Republican strength in the northern part of the state and the western part of the state as well. We shall see as the evening goes on. In the past, there have been mistakes in projections, but not very often. We're going to break away for local stations all across the country now to bring you up to date with your local races. I hope you'll come back. I'm Peter Jennings at Times Square, ABC headquarters in New York.
Tower. This is an ABC News special, The 2000 Vote. Now reporting, Peter Jennings.
There has been a change, but we're going to make a change. Take a look at the big map over there. Florida was, all right, first of all, I'm just going to call it back, first of all, and say that we now believe that the state of Florida is too close to call. We and most other news services had called it for Mr. Gore. We now believe it is too close to call. It's always been the biggest state where the race is close. But 25 electoral votes are an enormous number of votes, especially in a race that is so close at this moment. Arkansas, you can see, and Wisconsin still too close to call. Now let me get on to the rest of our... That's what the presidential race looks like on the map as a whole. And I want to go now to the state of Missouri, which may be very difficult for me at the moment. I apologize. Sometimes the technology doesn't work. Florida too close to call. Okay, we're going to go project Missouri. Missouri for Mr. Bush. 11 electoral votes every election since 1900, but once. Missouri sided with the winner. Mr. Clinton won that twice, so we project now that Missouri is won by Mr. Bush. We project that Utah is going to go to Mr. Bush. That's the biggest winning margin for Republicans in the last two elections. We project that Mr. Bush is also the winner in Idaho with its 4 electoral votes, part of that solid block of Republican states in the mountain region. Montana, we project, goes for Mr. Bush. Not been contested really at the presidential level this year. In Iowa, where it all begins with the Iowa caucuses at the very beginning of the campaign, state voted for Democrat in the last 3 elections. We now believe that is too close to call. And we also believe that in Nevada, it is too close to call. Mr. Clinton won this state in the last 2 elections. We're also now going to go back up to the Northeast and project that New Hampshire is going to go for Mr. Bush. New Hampshire for Mr. Bush. And we go on. Those are the electoral votes as the states look all across the country now. In the electoral vote now, Mr. Bush has 212, Mr. Gore has 173. And we're going to break away for just a moment so we can let some stations out in the West come and join us. And we hope you will stay with us for an election that is proving to be even more incredibly close than some of us thought going in this evening. Hope you'll stay with us.
You're watching News 10, the 2000 vote.
Welcome back, and what did we just tell you a few minutes ago? The Bush campaign is not conceding Florida because as the votes come in right now, Bush 51%, Gore 47%.
You may not know what they did in the state of Oregon until as late as Friday, so if Oregon becomes critical, this could go on for some time. I don't know about the rest of you, but I brought a toothbrush and a change of clothes. We could be here for a few days.
I think we should order a
One last point, Tom. If Florida ever switched back to Bush from Gore, then 25 votes less here. It's still wide open.
Donna Brazil is a campaign senior official in the Gore campaign. She's been watching all of this from the headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm told that she was both laughing and shaking her head. You don't think that you're going to have to give back the state of Florida, I gather?
Absolutely. And tell Tim what he just added up right now equals fuzzy math. Several of those states are leaning toward Al Gore. The tide is turning in our favor, and I believe many of those small states will come in our direction tonight.
Is there any doubt in your mind that the African-American vote proved to be critical, especially in Pennsylvania?
We had a very good turnout. As you well know, African-Americans, like most Americans, were very excited about this Democratic ticket, and we had record turnout in many cities across the country. I'm pleased with the turnout, but as you know, the polls are still open in many cities across America, and I'm urging people to go out, stand in line, and get ready to declare their ballot for Al Gore and Joe Lieberman.
What are you hearing about voter turnout tonight? And the other thing that we've been struck by is that your candidate, Vice President Al Gore, rarely raised Bill Clinton's name, and he talked not so much about the economic record of the last 8 years, but what he could do for the future. And yet, all the indications that we have so far is that Bill Clinton was not much of a factor in this presidential race, and that the economic record, in fact, helped you a great deal.
Well, Al Gore's name is on the ballot, and he talked about the policies and the change that this country has undergone over the last 8 years, 22 million new jobs, a record low unemployment in African-American and Latino communities. I believe that Al Gore spoke to the future. He talked about the great